instead of rolling dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know.
Among the two of us, I'm the one in the group project who does the reading beforehand.
You absolutely
but Rob,
are.
you're the ideas guy.
It's true. It's true. I don't do the reading, and I don't come prepared, and I refuse to apologize for that.
Well, so gaming news in our games, I had I think a very successful playtest of my Witcher socialism game, which I'm calling Levelers. People had a lot of fun. There's a lot of fiddly bits that have to be worked out, but it's not a full campaign setting, but it's been a lot of fun, the couple playtests I've had. Probably going to run it at a con soon.
I've played in this. It is fun. It is a cool setting and interesting idea. When I played it, there were definitely some things that needed to be tweaked, but generally,
yes.
I mean, I immediately found, a broken combo in the first, hour of the game, and then we also made some terrible decisions. But it was generally, I think, I'm into it, and I think it takes a lot of the good parts of.
That was my goal. Take good parts of D&D 5th edition, mix them together, create something where you probably won't play it more than 5 sessions. But, that's often how long our campaigns last anyways.
Well, sure.
So
and
plan for failure.
And it's built, well, no, you built it to be episodic, which is good. And we've talked about this before. There should be more episodic type games because it is so hard to get everyone to sit down for a year-long epic, level 1 to 15 or 20 campaign against a great evil. Sometimes you just want Monster of the Week, and that's okay.
How's your games been going?
Great. I had a first session of a new campaign. It is my all women campaign, not counting me. I am hoping at some point to hand it off to a woman who can DM, but in the meantime, I'm the most experienced, and I told them I would get them started. And it is my opportunity to test Waterdeep Dragon Heist with a couple of tweaks of my own. And as we discussed before, I really like the campaign, and I'm very excited about it. And it is every bit as rich and fun as I expected.
Women be role-playing.
Yeah, and I am working on a couple of other things. I'm hoping that this is going to segue into our greater conversation for this podcast. But I'm hoping to wrap a few things up so I can start moving toward launching a new homebrew campaign set in a world that I have been working on for a bit. But that reminds me, Matt, what is this thing that we're doing right now?
Well, this thing they're doing is here's a teaser for you just to make you mad because I know you wanted me to open the show. But since to preview our topic, Rob, in all the shitty sci-fi and fantasy you've read, what is the dumbest, most idiotic custom world that a author has created to set their novel in? What is your? I've got an answer for this, but what's your one that just really drives you crazy?
I've got an answer, and it's going to make me a lot of enemies. I'm sorry, fans, but it is J.K. Rowling's World of Hogwarts, Harry Potter. It falls apart on the face of it. It makes
full of whimsy.
Absolutely no sense. Even if you abandon the rules of logic, I'm sorry, it is completely nonsensical. You are all blinded by nostalgia.
Well, are you just angry about like the demographics of the Gryffindor class of 1994?
So I am upset.
Is that what pisses you off?
That the Sorting Hat divides children into good, bad, smart, and other. Yes, I am unhappy about that. I am also unhappy.
Rob's just probably a Hufflepuff.
I am a Hufflepuff.
That's why he's mad.
I don't like being sorted
That's
into...
a very Hufflepuff complaint.
I don't like being sorted into miscellaneous. Thank you very much.
I don't mind being sorted into smart people who are cool and wise.
Sure. Good, bad, smart, and miscellaneous. Very, very
the
fair.
4 basic types.
Very fair to children. I also think it's very stupid that the like most popular game has a really bizarre role where there is one player on the field who is substantially more important than every other player, and that is
the quarterback, Rob.
It's not the quarterback. It's like it's like the quarterback if the quarterback also was the running back, and every time they scored, the game ended and they got 120 points.
It's 150 points, Rob.
I'm just trying to do like a football analogy because it's it's 10 points for you know what. I did the math in my head. Yes, I also think it's like completely absurd that there's like a much greater population of normies that have no idea what's going on, and the entire wizarding world treats them like they're adorable little I don't know, like pets. Like
it actually makes the most sense to me. If I had magical powers and another segment of the population was magic with me, I would treat normies like they're less than, because they are Homo superius or whatever. Magneto.
I'm sorry to go down this path, but the only people who actually like have a realistic attitude toward Muggles are Grindelwald and Voldemort. Everybody else is like an entirely unrealistic attitude toward the rest of the population. They should, naturally being awful human beings like we all are, want to dominate and subjugate them rather than let them have their own, entirely separate world. Anyway,
after all, it's the crimes of Grindelwald.
So anyway, I could go on all day about Harry Potter, which I love, but have many world building criticisms of. Matt,
I think Rob's point holds up because everyone wants to play a Harry Potter role-playing game, but there just doesn't exist one, is because the world makes so little sense. It's nearly impossible to create any sort of role-playing game system for Harry Potter beyond just using like Fate or storytelling system where none of the mechanics really matter.
And like there's no like rhyme or reason to wizard power levels. It just seems to be whoever wants it more wins the duel, which is fine, but not a very like.
That's true. That's how fights, elections, other sports.
Whoever wins anything they're the ones who really wanted it. Anyway, please don't write in telling me how mad you are at me. I love Harry Potter. I just have as I get older, a lot of criticisms of the world that is set in.
Well, thanks, Rob, for proving you're the worst type of nerd.
I am the worst type of nerd.
Now I will prove I'm the best type of nerd. Mine is definitely Aragon.
That was my runner-up. I just couldn't remember the details for Aragon.
You just forgot it existed, which thankfully most of us did.
This is good. I approve, Matt. Tell us about Aragon.
Well, Aragon is, and this is not Aragorn, famed Ranger of the North and Lost King of Gondor, and it's not Aragon, the kingdom in medieval Iberia. It's Aragon with an E, and it's a novel that we're all angry about because the author was like probably our age, Rob.
Matt, he was 15 when he published it.
I thought, but like, weren't we 15 when he published it?
He's our age now. Sorry, you're correct. He is our age currently, yes.
I'm assuming he's been aging along with us.
I misunderstood.
Maybe he's using his author money to.
I misunderstood. Yes, we all grew up.
Transfer blood into his stream, so he's with probably only 20 now.
Christopher Paolini, as he was becoming famous for his terrible dragon book.
Similar background to us, and it's just like you're shitty fake Lord of the Rings, and we talk about when world building that you want to like take what you love and cut what you don't, and he certainly did that, but there's a certain point where everything is so incredibly derivative of other works of fiction, it just makes me mad, especially in that the plot of the movie is book. They made a movie out of it that thankfully flopped. Is exactly the same as Star Wars.
Sure.
A lonely farm boy raised by their adopted family is delivered a special MacGuffin that him and a wise but gruff mentor have to get to a princess, and he discovers he has magical powers.
Yep. It's awful. And, if anybody who has parents who work in the publishing industry apparently can get their shitty fantasy.
Is that how it happened?
That's how it happened. That's right. Is parents work in the publishing or worked in the publishing industry?
I feel better already, actually.
Yeah. Don't worry. I spent a lot of time looking into why Christopher Paolini got his shitty book published and I didn't. And
hate researching.
It's my very favorite activity. Yeah.
So anyway, today we're talking about world building and specifically for role-playing game campaigns. And this show is Dungeon Master of None. And
I am Dungeon Master Rob.
And I'm Dungeon Master Matt. And so, yeah, we've talked a little bit about world building before. In our past episodes, we've talked about how sort of what not to do, what your end goal should be, some sort of pitch document or a campaign Bible that you can present to your players. And we've talked about where to sort of get your inspiration from, how to take the things you like and turn them into something tasty and delicious for your players to consume in a role-playing game.
We often reference aspects of world building because this is important to us and we are interested. Matt and I are both historians, so we think often about systems and about structures and about different, places and time periods. This is how we are trained.
Brodelian historians.
Oh, indeed. This is a good word. How we tend to picture the world and think about our the fiction that we consume. And I think we mentioned this in the first one. There is a bad habit among many nerds to get overly caught up in world building to the point of doing too much and missing the entire purpose of it. But really good world building, I think, stands out exceptionally among the now glut of fantasy properties because there is so much in our opinion, my opinion, really lazy and sloppy world building. So I think it's more important than people give it credit for, but a lot of writers, especially amateur writers, approach it the wrong way and spend a lot of time on things that they don't need to be spending time on.
Like you said, we talked about where to get started with inspiration. We talked about what not to do, right? To remember that the entire purpose you're doing this is to create something for your players to play in. So we talked about what we hope to accomplish in this episode is to talk about how to get started, what actually to do, and we're both going to do a little bit of that along with you. So if you're listening to this and you're working on your own custom world, whether it's just a kernel of an idea or something you've already played a campaign with it, we'd love to hear from you, and hopefully you can follow along on this world building journey with us.
We obviously love this topic, and we've both built multiple worlds at this point and are always refining our process and always looking to do better and do more. And so this is both an opportunity for us to narrow that down, but also help you potentially learn from us and what the work that we've already done. And
yeah, we're going to talk mostly about our process. My process is to pull up a laptop while watching a Hallmark Christmas movie and jot down some things in a spreadsheet because I'm weird like that.
My process is to take an obscene amount of notes over the course of several months and or years until I have a critical mass and then force myself to turn it into an outline or something recognizable.
Take all those notes, you pile them in a little pile.
Yeah. Press them down, turn it into a little
You get one of those industrial smashers that they always crush things on for YouTube videos. Yeah. And then out comes a campaign.
Comes a world. So yeah, actually, this is a good point. And what we wanted to talk about, I think this is a good place to start. But I think we talked about this last time. Is the place that you want to start, right? So you're interested in building a world, which is an interesting thing and something you should want to do. You need to ask yourself, what is the purpose of the world that you are building, right? Are you going to use it for a campaign setting? Is it going to be...
That's our assumption.
This is our assumption.
For a homebrew campaign.
Right. This is
not a campaign setting.
So this is our assumption, is that you're going to run a homebrew campaign in it. Now, if you already have something that you wrote for a novel or, you're adapting maybe parts of a fanfic or something, that's okay. But you need to think about what this thing is that you have and what its purpose is. And if you're listening and you want to use our advice to, for example, build something for a novel or for, maybe you have something else in mind, not a homebrew tabletop role-playing game campaign, that's fine. But just even if you're not planning to do what we are assuming you want to do, which is a homebrew campaign, just make sure you know what you want this to be for. There is nothing worse than a overly complicated and extensively, robustly detailed world that has no purpose. It's a great way to have somebody talk to you for hours on end about the coinage systems of one of their, minor duchies, which is, would be fascinating if there were a story set that had something to do with coinage in that minor duchy. But sometimes you end up just hearing about something that has no relation to anything else. So start thinking, the very first thing that you need to think about is, what is this for? And so we are assuming that you are going to build this world or parts of this world with the intent of running a homebrew tabletop role-playing game in that setting.
And this is a good point for a break, so we will be right back with the answer to that question.
Okay, I'm gonna have another beer.
The bar closed that night, I offered her a ride. She said, take me to your car. But I lost my license on a DUI. I took her away on my handlebars. She called me Don Quixote. Quite ironic, I suppose. We were drunk as dragons who feast on the fermented flesh of the fallen heroes.
Okay.
So, Rob, one of the differences between creating a coinage system for one small duchy in a novel is if it comes up in the story, that's actually useful information. When you're creating a homebrew, when you're world building for a campaign you are going to run, you don't know exactly what the story is going to be, so you don't know exactly what details are going to be important. So, what should you start with?
This is actually a great point from Matt, because in a novel you can control what you're going to include and what is important to the story. For a homebrew campaign, you may have to write out a bunch of stuff that might come up. As we mentioned, you want to think about what this is for, and so this actually, you would think this might mean something more concrete about your world, like a nation or a continent or something like that, or an empire. But what it actually means is thinking about what is the game that you're running, what is the campaign that you intend to have, and what are the themes and feelings, and what are the what type of camp? Sorry, this is a long way of saying what type of campaign is it? Because if it's a sweeping, big bad invading, the wholesome, friendly kingdom of the elves, that's one thing. If it's a gritty urban campaign where you're siding with, different guilds of thieves, that's a different thing entirely. If it's mega dungeon delve, then that's something else entirely. So decide what kind of campaign you're running.
And I think Rob has hit on one of my patented 3 ways to start world building, which is theme, right? You can start with a theme. And if you don't know what themes are available to you, assuming you're using Dungeons and Dragons, though this could be with any system, in the Dungeon Master's Guide, there is page 34, a list of themes, right? From mythic adventure to heroic fantasy to high magic to sword and sorcery to war, intrigue. So yeah, you could start with theme.
Yeah, and so I don't use the DM's guide for this because I have an overabundance of ideas. But if you have an idea that's half finished, or one that you're having trouble like putting a framework around, this is actually the first part of the DM's guide is actually really, really good for this, because it starts with building your world and building a campaign and setting like sort of a thematic and intellectual framework for it. And it's a great idea if you are close but not quite there to go through and see what it recommends and use that as a way to find answers for, what do I want to have for my campaign? What do I want to have for the big bad? How many levels do I want to have, et cetera, et cetera. It's a really good way to to make sure you've covered all your bases before you start actually world building and actually designing a campaign. So it's a pretty useful tool.
And if you think of what like some great campaign settings that start with theme, I think immediately of Dark Sun. This is a sort of gritty post-apocalyptic magic campaign set in the world of Athos, where the magic and gods are sort of failing, and this is the basically end of the world is approaching very, very slowly. And that's a great theme for things, sort of decaying empires. I personally, for my world, did not start with theme. Can you think of any other examples of things that start with theme, or did yours start with theme?
Well, I think I'm going to go a little bit further afield, but the great example of this is actually everything in Savage Worlds, because the core system is mostly the same, but the entire game is structured around theme. So there's an Old West Savage Worlds. There's a Victorian Ripper Bloodborne Savage Worlds. There's superhero Savage Worlds. And this is, I think I've already talked about this being my second favorite system. But one of the strengths of it is that the basic rules are the same, and then you lay a layer of theme over it, which allows you to play in a certain type of game very, very easily.
Yeah, Rippers is a great campaign setting. Rippers it is built entirely around theme.
Yeah,
right.
It's a very strong theme. It's drippingly thematic. It's very, very good. And I also like Savage Worlds is like biggest property is their Deadlands, their Old West one, which is a terrific setting for playing any sort of Western type game. So thinking about
and you can put theme into almost any type of campaign setting, but if you want to run a swashbuckling adventure, right? Forgotten Realms is not your best campaign setting, right? So having a campaign setting that aligns more closely with your theme works perfectly, right? If you have a theme of a campaign in mind, you can then build a homebrew setting around that theme.
Exactly. And this is the huge advantage of world building, right? A lot of people take the 5th edition setting or the 5th edition core rules and then try to fit it onto a homebrew campaign. But if you have the time and energy, it often is so much richer and better to build a world where that makes sense, because 5th edition rules and the Forgotten Realms setting aren't a perfect fit for everything.
All right, we've been talking in the abstract here. Let's get concrete as we walk you through some things. So, hey, Rob, so we're both working on refining or drafting campaign worlds. Just for our listeners who may not be familiar with what we're working on, let's both give our elevator 60-second, 30-second even pitch for our campaign worlds.
Sure. So Thunder on the Steppe is a campaign for anybody who is interested in high drama and intrigue and adventure and warfare, combat on a grand scale, and wants to sort of explore a non-standard, non-Western fantasy setting. And especially if you're interested in horses or riding on horses or want to have characters who ride horses or ride anything, Thunder on the Steppe is the campaign for you. It also has it also grows from a small and interpersonal conflict to a much larger one over time.
What's the name of that campaign? Homebrew again?
It is called Thunder on the Steppe.
Na 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 na. Thunder. Okay. All right. Here's my pitch. All right. Wild Space is the space fantasy you didn't know you wanted. Taking a cue from John Carter of Mars, Farscape, Firefly, Star Trek, take Dungeons and Dragons to the stars in a way that Spelljammer never really could. From exploring ancient alien civilizations to dealing with petulant gods to holding your beautiful collection of tieflings, elves, dwarves, and humans together as the evil empires of the cosmos threaten them. Wild Space is for you if you want swashbuckling action, interstellar intrigue, and old school style sword and planet action.
Okay.
Wild Space. Also, I feel more confident using that name now that WildStar, the MMO, finally went over to it. It's dead.
It's dead.
It's finally dead.
Rest in peace, I guess.
I guess. It was kind of shitty. It had a nice idea.
It was a good idea.
I mean, the trailer was cool.
Would have been better if it had come out 10 years earlier.
That's right. If it had come out.
It was for a different age.
Yes. And had another $1 billion in its budget.
Right.
Let's what's your themes you're going to be going with as we work through our own homebrews?
Well, sure. So my biggest and most successful homebrew is, if we mentioned this before, is Thunder on the Steppe, which
we're still working on, right?
We're still working on,
just a little outline right now. It's been play tested once.
We hope to have a campaign setting Bible ready for all y'all to enjoy at some point in the near future. But I'm trying to remember the kernel of this idea. I think it may actually have been that I had just watched the terrific film Mongol about the early life of Temujin.
Starring John Wayne.
God damn it.
No, that's the Conqueror.
That's
right?
the Conqueror.
Right. Mongol's like a weird Russian film,
Mongol's an actual Mongolian film, or I think it was filmed in Mongolia.
Okay.
Probably Russian funded. Anyway, this was in the heady days of Pathfinder, which had a lot of rich rules for mounted combat, and the theme was that I wanted to have a campaign on horseback, right? I wanted to see what it would be like if all of the action, all of the campaign, all the adventure took place where everyone had to ride, which I think is an unexplored area of fantasy, because there are many, many people groups and civilizations where it was entirely everybody rode all the time, 18 hours a day in the saddle. And that was the theme that I started with Thunder on the Steppe. I was like, what would it be like if we had, a Mongol empire and everybody was riding all the time? What would the world look like? What would the conflicts look like? What would the campaign look like with this as the core?
Rob looked at the current offerings of campaign settings and said, there's nothing really for that valuable and crucial horse girl demographic.
That's right. I also found nothing for the horse girl feelings demographic. And
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's your theme, is like sort of mounted combat. But if you had to pick like the different themes presented in the Dungeon Master's Guide, right, from wushu to mystery to intrigue to war to heroic fantasy, where does yours sort of fit into those? Sure. Or maybe it doesn't fit in.
No, it does fit, and that's a good question. It was very much war and intrigue and heroic fantasy. The players were involved in a small part that grew to be a large part of a world-spanning, intergenerational, gigantic magical conflict, combined with some deep, Game of Thrones style family intrigue among the ruling Mongol Empire analog. So that was the core theme after the sort of like central conceit of the horseback.
I think that's a good rule you've just in your description. When you look at the flavors of fantasy on pages 38 through 41 of your Dungeon Master's Guide, picking about 3 is pretty good for one campaign, and really even one campaign setting. So Rob has picked war, intrigue, and heroic fantasy.
And
good combo.
Yes, and I definitely think that you can. The narrower you go, the better it is. And I intentionally intended for it to start out with intrigue and then grow to become more heroic fantasy. And that's also a good way, I think, to frame a campaign, especially in D&D, where power levels are a little hard to manage once you get too high. It's a little bit more difficult to do small scale intrigue or mystery once you get to, high levels in Dungeons and Dragons, it's another issue, but a good way to get around that is sort of build in an escalation of the campaign, which is what I tried to do. Matt, how about you?
So like I said, I didn't really start with theme, but so for the campaign setting, I'm workshopping in this world building thing, which I am tentatively titling Wild Space. I wanted to go back to the themes of Spelljammers. Spelljammers a very flawed campaign setting in that it was mostly made as sort of a grab bag grafted on to other campaign settings, like, do you want to take your party from Waterdeep to the stars? Here's a way to do it. I want to make something that was made for sort of a space fantasy setting, right? Your Star Wars, your Farscapes, your Star Treks, all of those good things. So for me, the themes was absolutely number one, swashbuckling action, right? I wanted, pirates and all that comes with them. I wanted intrigue, but not exactly the same type of intrigue that maybe you're talking about, family houses, more intrigue of that you see in something like Star Trek or Firefly, right? Big political factions, sort of determining the fate of the universe.
Sure.
And then my last theme is as one that's not really mentioned in the Dungeon Master's Guide. I guess it sort of is sword and sorcery, but a subgenre of that, sword and planet, kind of John Carter-esque feeling of you go to a planet and there's a lot of ancient aliens and a lot of weird creatures and you have to deal with them. So those are themes for my campaign.
Would you call it Journey of the Fellowship to the Stars?
Oh. I can't translate that in Latin. Ad aspera juntis. I don't know what together is in or fellowship in Latin.
I'm sorry. Okay. I just made an extremely nerdy Gene Roddenberry joke. Anyway, let's. So yeah. He called Star Trek Wagon Train to the Stars.
Wagon Train.
Did you get it? Did you get it, Matt? Did you get it, Matt?
I did get the fucking Gene Roddenberry.
Cut this part out. Sorry, I lost track. Okay. So yeah. The thing is that what's this? Matt. I think this is interesting that we use these two examples. What would you say is distinct about what we both chose that necessitated making a setting for them rather than just using something that already existed?
No, that's a good point. So for me, you can't use anything that's published in, I want to play D&D 5th edition. You can't use anything that's published in D&D 5th edition to tell a story about swashbuckling and journeying to other planets. I could just play Spelljammer from 2nd edition, right? But Spelljammer, for all the potential it has, doesn't really have baked into the rule setting really that sort of journey and exploration of Sword and Planet where you go to a new planet maybe every week. It's sort of not really set up for that. So I was like, I need to write, this has to be written from the ground up, right? While still keeping the core idea of magic takes you into space as opposed to technology.
Right. I still don't think that there's any very good, and to be frank, including mine, campaigns that take place sort of on the open steppe or the plains that involve mostly riding, mostly horseback, large distances, and avoid most of the time dungeon delving. And I still think that's like a sea-based campaign, one of the areas that is still rich for exploration, and there's still a lot of area to explore there. But that I when I started thinking about how could I play this game, I realized I needed to do something new. And I think it was because we had played Kingmaker, which was so close, but you ended up doing a lot of dungeon delving anyway. So it was just you spent a lot of time riding your horse between places that had dungeons in them. And I was like, well, this is almost there, but not quite.
Horses are for riding, Rob, not for fighting.
Yeah.
All right. That is one way to begin looking at your homebrew, is to start with a theme, right? You can go from the list of the Dungeon Master's Guide. You can do it from your own inspiration, but that is only one way. The second way to start homebrewing your own world, and I think this is probably the most important way, and whether you start here or not, it's got to be one of the first questions you address, and that is conflict, right? A good world that is built for a role-playing campaign has to be built on some sort of friction between groups or forces or what have you. It has to be conflict right there on the surface that your players can get into. Otherwise, if there's no conflict, if it's a solved equation, why play in it?
Every fantasy property, every science fiction property that you know and love has a really good, really compelling conflict behind it. And so, you can start somewhere else, but before you end your world building, you definitely need to answer this question, which is, what is the conflict that is driving your campaign, but what is the conflict that also sort of like
drives the world? Drives
the world, exactly. Overshadows everything that is happening. And, in Westeros, it's the threat of the White Walkers. In Dragon Age,
Rob, in the books, they're called the Others.
I'm sorry. In Dragon Age, it's the Templar versus the Mages. In Lord of the Rings, obviously, it's the threat of Sauron or Melkor, depending on where
it's just good versus evil.
And by the way, it can be that simple. You don't have to come up with something totally groundbreaking if you have a powerful and interesting and properly motivated evil villain. It can also just be, a evil empire. There's nothing wrong with that. It helps to innovate a little bit, but you don't have to break new ground. You just need to know what the conflict is.
The important thing is to have at least one and preferably several major conflicts that your campaign setting that your players could interact with, right? That was, if you listened to our episode from a couple weeks ago about Ravnica, that was one of our critiques of that, is that there was all these guilds, but, what was the big conflict in that? They all were in conflict and all dependent and against each other, so what's the big deal? It's a solved equation, right? If the players... A good way to answer this question, I think this is absolutely essential as a world-building dungeon master, is to ask yourself, what would happen if the adventuring party, if the heroes never did anything, right? Never got together? What would happen, right? And, for things like Lord of the Rings, it's like, oh, well, Sauron would have covered the lands in a second darkness, right? There you go. There's your conflict. So one way, instead of sort of just making all these factions that are against each other, right, is to ask yourself, well, what's going to happen if heroes don't arise?
This is the classic example of an oversight here is the otherwise tremendous video game Oblivion, where if you follow the plot and you imagine what would happen if the player were not there, it happens exactly the same way. There is it is from all outward appearances, you actually don't have any impact on the overall conclusion of the game, and this can be okay, but it's definitely a severe oversight, and you should avoid it. And
it's a subpar. It's okay. It's
really not great. I mean, definitely. Your players should feel like they have some impact on the outcome. It doesn't really matter if you if you don't railroad them, if in return for not railroading them, they don't actually have any impact on the world. Ravnica's a great example of this because it fundamentally doesn't make any sense for one of the guilds to disappear or be overthrown or whatever, because there are all these different combinations of magic, and what would happen, how would it even make sense for there to be no red blue guild or whatever, so you could, I guess, imagine a different one with the same color combination rising up, but that would stop being Ravnica, I guess, is the problem there.
Here's a counterexample of the way to do sort of factions balancing each other as your conflict in a good way is the Planescape edition, right? Mm-hmm. So Planescape is set in mostly the outer planes, right? Where forces of good and evil and law and chaos interact, right? But the factions that are most important to the players, right? The capital factions, right? Capitalized factions, are not just factions. There's a good faction and there's a lawful good faction and a chaotic neutral faction. No, they're factions about the ways to interpret the multiverse, right? You have the Sensates or the Mercy Killers or the Godsmen, right? What does it all mean? And they are struggling for dominance in interpreting the world, right? As opposed to just being pure incarnations of the world, and the players have the chance to, join these factions and, if in case your campaign goes into like a faction war, take them to either survival at the very least or dominance of what all of this means.
Yeah.
Planescape's a great example of a campaign setting built on conflict.
One of my campaigns is taking a detour through Sigil right now, and it's great because the factions are so good because they're different philosophies about the meaning of like existence, and that is so much better than they're lawful good, they're chaotic evil. It's definitely like advanced world building. Sigil is it's great. Still crossing my fingers that the campaign book for next year is a Planescape setting.
Probably not. Nothing good's going to happen in 2019. We've predicted it here.
Yeah, you heard it here, folks. 2019 is another shit year.
Okay, well, let's talk about the conflicts in the projects we're working on. Like, what would you say is the major conflict of, D&D on horseback?
There's a small, a medium, and a large conflict.
I like how you've set this up.
In Thunder on the Steppe. And again, I talked about building escalation into this, so as the players get more powerful, they have different things to deal with. The small scale conflict is the interpersonal and familial conflict between different Khans in the Orchak horde, the orc Mongol horde analog, right? That's the small conflict, right? They are involved with, they have a liege lord and they need to manage these different relationships. The medium scale conflict is, and was particularly interesting to me, deciding whether or not it is better or worse for the world, for the Orchak horde to continue to exist. So they oppose it.
Tension between freedom and empire,
right?
Or order and independence.
Do they support the generally benevolent but authoritarian horde, or do they overthrow it and risk something worse coming into the vacuum? And the large scale conflict is, and this is much a general long-standing magical threat from the great beyond. Again, not quite as original as the other two, but you got to have something big. For those high levels, you got to have a world-consuming enemy. So I like to. It doesn't have to be small, medium, and large, but definitely think of different scales of conflicts. And it could be the same conflict. You just have to sort of find a way for it to make sense for the players to interact with it at different levels. Matt, how about you with Wild Space?
So Wild Space's conflicts are, and maybe this is something that needs to be workshopped. What do you think of this?
Sure.
Is that they kind of, in a way, they echo. It rhymes. They echo. It rhymes, just like the prequel trilogy and the original trilogy of Star Wars. Is that the smaller scale conflict, and of course it is a pretty big scale for a D&D campaign, is that the player's home system is full of basically every fantasy race in not just the player's handbook, but D&D Beyond plus some more, right? You got all these different peoples from Orokas to dwarfs to humans trying to get along in a federation, if you will. So the Free Worlds Union. And so can the Union sort of tolerate all these different people from Drow to Warforged to Changelings and work together to survive? So that's sort of a conflict of unity. And then the larger conflict is a conflict between the Union, which is a couple small systems in a very uncaring and scary galaxy, and a bunch of evil empires, evil in a different way, right? One of the things I love is in Star Trek, all the villains are sort of dark mirrors of human things taken to the extreme. And I've been working on things like that. So a conflict between what we love and cherish about D&D, which is that you can all be in an adventuring party together, and empires that represent some sort of dark reflection of that.
Which is great. It's sort of it's one of the many obvious inspirations of Star Trek, but it's a more nuanced and complicated and well thought out version of that, and with some interesting conflicts that did not exist in, the much.
Yeah, now that I think about it, the conflicts are basically mirrors, right? It's one is about unity, the other is about the opposite of that.
Right.
Well, and if I had to stretch to do, I think Rob's model of thinking of small and medium and larger, at least 3 tiers of conflict, there's no reason not to add to your campaign setting a even darker threat from beyond, from a, parallel universe, a threat from outside the galaxy, great old ones lurking in the darkness between the stars, all that good stuff.
Yeah, and I think about this. This was common in a lot of older science fiction and fantasy, but there was always sort of a hint of, there's always, when there's an evil invading force coming in, there's often a hint that they were fleeing something even darker behind them.
Even worse.
This was
even worse than the Aboleth Empire.
That's right.
Or the Dynasty of the Great Worm.
This happened in the Dune books with the one of the later Dune books that I've already forgotten the actual.
Emperor of Dune?
Even later than that. Chapter House Dune. I've already forgotten all of what actually happened because.
Was it one written by Brian Herbert?
No, but those I think obviated my brain of all previous knowledge. I think reading the Brian Herbert books just this everything that I remember about Dune.
They destroyed a lot of things for sure.
Anyway, so this is This actually brings me to sort of the next point I wanted to think about is scope, right?
Right.
So we
well, before we talk about scope, just one last thing, and I don't think we have to talk about. There is another way to start thinking about your campaign, and because we already talked about it, which is you can build a campaign setting based on, role-playing games are games, right? You can base it on the mechanics of the game, right? If you have something mechanically you want to add that isn't there, sort of the one unique thing, that's reason enough to make a campaign setting. Not necessarily, you don't have to do that. But if you want something mechanically different, like for me, I want some new classes and new species and better ship combat rules, right? That's another reason for it. It doesn't have to be the primary reason, but some people will start there, and that's okay too.
Yeah. And Thunder on the Steppe was a little bit like that.
Oh yeah, what's your one mechanical difference?
Well, so I mean, I had a theme, but it also coincided with a mechanic, which is that there were pretty interesting rules in Pathfinder for mounted combat. And so I wanted to see if I could create both a setting that explored a theme that I hadn't seen and make use of some interesting rules that almost never get used in a game that is, as the title suggests, takes place largely in dungeons. But that can be a good way to build an interesting setting. I mean, Thunder on the Steppe turned into a very, in my opinion, exciting and interesting setting because I wanted to explore something that is not explored in a lot of the existing material.
Well, hopefully we can workshop it into an interesting and unique setting. I would say one thing that might mechanically for your setting be a cool thing to add is actually using the renown or honor system in sort of a bigger scope than this helps you out with a faction.
Yes, absolutely. So. I have enjoyed Wizards has put out this renown thing for a couple of recent settings, and it's a loose mechanical system, but I like it. I like the idea behind it, and I definitely think it has potential to be valuable in a broader sense.
Let's take a break and talk about scale.
It helps. So scale is one of the other that we've talked about several ways to start. And scale is another one of those really important things that you want to consider because it tells you how much work you need to do and the work that you need to do. So you need to know how much of the world you have to know about. And this depends on the scope of your your campaign and what you're going to cover.
Do you need one kingdom, one town, an entire world?
Right. And at some point you should have answers for everything, especially in, not everything, but most things in a homebrew setting, because your players are going to poke at all the little corners of your world and find gaps. So you need to try to do as much as possible. But if you can narrow the scope, if you can, let's not say narrow, let's say focus the scope. It will help you
narrow your focus.
It will help you in your world building because you won't have to do so much work. So it helps to, when starting your homebrew, decide what it is that you need to cover. And so the way that I did this with Thunder in the Steppe was that I started in one area of the world, and I knew the players would eventually travel to others, which gave me time to organically, and also just like give me time to do it, build out those parts before they got there.
Right. And the Dungeon Master's Guide and various advice things say all kinds of different advice on where to start, right? Should you start small and work out? Should you start big and work in? Should you start somewhere in between? But I think what Rob's saying, and what I would agree with, and what most dungeon masters who have done this know but don't always share, is you really do sort of a two-pronged approach. You have to start small because you want to start a campaign, so you need the area where your players are going to start. But at the same time, you do a little bit of either medium or large as well, right?
Right. I mean, I think, in my opinion, there's really only one way to do this, and that's start small and work out. In my opinion,
we here at Dungeon Masters of None are very happy to say, for a lot of things, there's only one way of doing things, and that is our way.
That's correct. Our way is correct. Other people are liars. So start small, and then you absolutely should know generally what the rest of the world looks like. But at the very beginning, you should only really put a lot of effort into the first area. And so for me, I like to start with a city. I always like to start with a city. And I actually didn't do this with Thunder in the Steppe, but since then I have. And it start with the city and work out, right? And that's just me being interested in cities at this stage in my creative career. But it also is a good way to, especially Matt and I have talked about cities a lot, but it's good because they're places of cultural exchange. And so you can have a lot of bits and pieces of the rest of your world that you are able to explore and provide hints to without actually having those areas fully fleshed out.
No, I like that too. And the other side of the coin, if this is where you're the easiest sort of, I'd say go with whatever's easiest for you. If you're like Rob, really great at making interesting cities, which he is. If you're really good at making dungeons, and maybe that's all you've done before, start with a dungeon, right? Which has, and put some of those hints of the large scale stuff you're working on in that dungeon. Start with a city, start with a dungeon. You start with a village and a dungeon. So I think that's a great way to start small.
Whatever you are doing whenever you're building a campaign or running a game, you need to do what you're good at, what you enjoy doing, what allows you to keep doing it, right? So,
do you like making gods and pantheons? Start there.
Yes. And I still think that, maybe you love building entire worlds, and by all means do that, but find a way to narrow your scope to the things that you just enjoy, right? So maybe you enjoy creating pantheons. Maybe you enjoy creating governmental systems.
Villains.
Maybe you like creating, you love numismatists. You love coins. You love, currency systems. That's okay. That's a great place to start. But Matt's rolling his eyes at me. He doesn't think so.
Sure.
Whatever makes you happy is what I'm saying. But find the thing that you enjoy and then work around that.
I have met one of the few employed advanced degrees numisticists at a conference, and they're fucking rad dudes and gals, by the way. Okay, sorry, nothing against numisticists. All right, so Rob, let's do this. Let's create sort of a small scale thing for the worlds we're fleshing out, and then talk about how some of the small scale things that we're working on map to a larger scale thing.
Sure. So with Thunder in the Steppe, I started with one con And his horde, basically. So I knew who the leader was, I knew who the Khan was, and I knew who his people were. I knew where they lived, where their sort of like grazing grounds, where their travel was, what their purpose was. And that was the beginning, right? That was the core. That was where the players all started. And then from there, I mapped out his relationship to his brothers, his father, his uncles, his extended siblings within the greater empire. And then, again, this all happened over time. I had sketched out a basic outline for all of this, but I filled it out over time. I then took that, greater empire relationship and sketched out how it related to the areas around it and fleshed out the geography and the nations and the history of those nations over time as I found out what my players were interested in, what they wanted to pursue, what parts of the world they found most compelling. And that was the way that I started small and then built out.
How did you tie that to the large scale conflicts? I mean, I think it's pretty obvious for our listeners, right, that the sort of family dynamics tie to that medium scale thing Rob worked on, like does an empire, should the empire continue to exist to rule over these far-flung principalities? Sure.
And this was a real, I'll admit, after the fact, this was a real J.J. Abrams move, is that I seeded some things that I wasn't entirely sure how they were going to link together at the end. And
it's a mystery box.
It's a mystery box. And then as I got a better sense for the world and for the grand conflict, I tied those things back in and made the sort of the fate of certain parts of this empire relate to the eventual conflict with the galaxy spanning, world threatening evil. Don't be like me. Plan ahead. Know the answer to things before
No, I think we should be like you. I think it is completely fine to put in mysteries boxes.
This is I agree, but also it is a little anxiety inducing as a DM. So have a answer. It may not be the best answer, and if you want to kick the can down the road and come up with something a little bit better or a little bit more refined that relates to the answer, but do feel free to seed mysteries or question marks or whatever, or interesting things for your players to solve, and you maybe don't know exactly how they pan out. That's okay, but have an answer. Definitely put something in your notes about what it is, or what the end result or the purpose of this thing is. Matt, how about you?
Okay, so you're going to have to help me with this, Rob, because I am not speaking in the past tense. I am designing sort of off the cuff here. But I thought since you started with sort of a family group, I'm going to start with a dungeon. Now, I think dungeons should be in every Dungeons and Dragons campaign setting, even if some of them can be traversed on horseback. Obviously, my themes for Wild Space of swashbuckling, sword and planet, intrigue, and exploration. How am I going to put a dungeon in the beginning that fits with all that? And, so I was thinking, the conflict I've set up is there are all these other space empires, right? They're not the Klingons or the Romulans. They're the Aboleths and the sort of interstellar draconics and maybe a religion-based empire and an empire where everyone is the Borg, but also part of a living god. Let's call it the Great Becoming, is threatening our beautiful, rainbow coalition of humanoids. So, maybe they invaded. And so instead of a dungeon of ancient ruins, of ancient aliens, which in the vein of Marvel Cosmic, I'm definitely going to have lots of those. But I think my first dungeon could be some crashed interstellar ships, some crashed spelljammers.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Left over from a battle.
Sure. Yeah. A downed battle cruiser or something like that.
Something really powerful.
Something big and powerful. Something where you can, something possibly with a conflict past or present within it. Where you
already inside it. Yeah.
Yeah. Where you can demonstrate some of the bits and pieces
larger
of your
threats.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's exactly what came to mind for me. Yeah.
Excellent. And then if I want to work in that presages my large conflict, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to explore these uncharted planets? Is it the good guys, the players' characters, or is it these other evil empires? And then I'm thinking then, this has got me thinking of, for the smaller conflict, holding the Union together. Well, I could just have the players all pick sort of factions, and maybe they each have their own mission, and which group they decide to work for in the end is kind of sort of aligning themselves in that sort of internal conflict. Okay, so now I know at the medium scale, I need to design a world that has a lot of crashed spaceships and maybe where people are, there's a big battle in space over it that characters are exploring. I realize I'm describing Jakku from the new Star Wars series, but I don't fucking care. I don't fucking care.
One, that's fine. Jakku is great. It also could be more recent. Like maybe again, it could be more Firefly, right? Your players are picking through a more recent wreck, right?
Like it fucking just happened.
It just
right?
happened,
It's
and
like the battle
right.
was a week ago.
Yeah, the wreckage is
there are still survivors
smoldering.
down there.
There's still survivors. There might even still be fighting, and they're going down to find somebody, or maybe again, this is great because it like lets your players decide what kind of party they want to be. But maybe they're rescuing somebody. Maybe they're just scavengers looking to make a quick buck. It adds a lot of opportunities.
And that's something I could let the players decide, right?
Yeah.
If they want to be scavengers
Absolutely.
or not. Okay, I just need then. It sounds like I can start building this dungeon. I just need 2 factions, and since I've been working on the large scale stuff some, I already have. I think the 2 best ones to work with, I think, are going to be I'm either calling them the Antillians or the Magocracy of Masks or something. They're basically the evil wizards that kill you by giving you great magic, and they're sometimes an ally of the Union, sometimes not. And probably the enemy to that is something maybe more unambiguously evil, like the aboleths, which just want to turn everyone into brainworm slaves.
Well, and the
I'll workshop that. I might pick a different faction.
I love the aboleths as a vast empire. And also their ships could be full of water, or they could be in tanks, whatever. It's amazing. No, aboleths are perfect. But the obvious, to me, the thing that I would do is that this crashed spaceship Spelljammer, we'll say it's a Union crashed Spelljammer, maybe, and inside of it is a captured, possibly aboleth or an important aboleth artifact, which can then kickstart the entire campaign because everybody wants it, or they're being hunted. Go ahead.
Instead of a captured thing inside, this is a massive battle cruiser.
Sure.
Inside of it is an experimental special snowflake ship
This
of
is a
itself,
classic.
like a little.
This is a classic.
A little
yes,
dinghy,
that's right.
like
like the
prince's. Or the Prince's yacht, Eric Prince and Betsy DeVos. A yacht
right.
in a yacht,
A little
right?
yacht
It's
inside
a little yacht inside a yacht,
Yeah.
but it's a special, because why not give your players the coolest thing there is?
Exactly.
And so
Give them a
it's an
special
experimental spaceship in there, and they find it, and then boom, they're off to the stars, and everyone wants them on their side because they have, the fastest or the best arms.
Seems best.
It punches above its weight in some way.
Canonically, or in the grand narrative, it makes fastest is the one with the most narrative weight. So yeah, it should be like the fastest ship in the galaxy, or one of the fastest, or the fastest ship.
The prettiest ship
Punches above its weight, exactly.
Yeah, that's actually a flaw in the recently released experimental 5th edition rules for ships. Ships don't have charisma modifiers, and they should. Ships can intimidate enemies, right? When Queen Anne's Revenge rolls up, you know who it is.
Who it is.
She has a high charisma score. Okay, I'm actually thinking the crashed ship that is in fact a dungeon with levels is maybe 2 interlocked ships from, they rammed each other and crashed down the plane.
Yeah.
That way I can have the 2 factions. Okay, so that'll be a small thing, and that'll presage the larger things of the campaign. All right, Rob, I think we did a pretty decent job of talking about how to get started by either thinking about conflict theme or even maybe a mechanical theme, and then looking at the scale you want to build on and how you have to build small, because this is for a role-playing game, while building at another scale too, whether that's large or medium or huge.
Yeah, I think so. And this is still just 102. We intend to do more world building.
I think this is basically 101. Before we've only talked about the idea of world building. Yeah. So for 102, I think we should pick a specific thing to both work on, whether it's the planes of existence, species in your campaign, NPCs and villains, campaign hooks, factions and organizations, the gods. Yeah. What do you, a town, what do you want to pick for our 102 that we'll both work on?
That's a good question. I think we should, you know what, Matt, I am almost like loath to say this, but I think that we should talk about magic and faith for our 102.
Magic and faith.
If there's a magic system, how it works, if it's different than the standard, and if there are gods, how they work. And if
it's not different from the standard, you still have to think about all the different things. What are wizards? What are warlocks in this world? All that kind of stuff.
And this magic could be and faith. A very long or a very short conversation, but I think that's where you have to sort of like start and then work down. This is actually the opposite of what we just talked about. But I do think you have to at least know the answer to this question before you start. Building
We're going to be working on different scales for different things. When we talk about world building villains or factions, right? That can be a very small scale thing, right?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to close out. So if you have one more thing before I close out.
Just do the fucking outro then.
Okay. Well, if you have, again, we obviously welcome your thoughts on this. So if you do have thoughts, please, as always, email us at dmofnone@gmail.com. Add us on Twitter at dmofnone. We would love to hear if you are wanting to know about some particular aspect of world building, or if you have thoughts, or you want to yell at me about Harry Potter, please absolutely let us know.
Rob, should we take this, kick this up a notch? Exploding die. Should we ask our listeners to join us on this probably several month-long journey through world building, to ask them to sort of answer these questions too? And then join us next time when we talk about magic and faith.
I think we should ask them that. If you are interested in building your own world, I think you should follow along with us as we go on this journey together.
Well, it's not National Writing Month. What's that called? NaNoWriMo.
We missed it.
But it's maybe more like World Building Semester.
Yeah, I like that. World Building Semester, yeah.
In a semester, maybe a quarter, we can try and come up. And again, our end goal is, a campaign Bible or a short, thing for our players.
Right. And Matt and I are both working on one. I want to adapt one that I have a lot of work done for. Matt is in the early stages of one. Yep. So we'll be working on this and thinking about it, and hopefully have some things to present to you before too much longer. Okay. Well, as always, thank you for listening. Don't forget to smash that like and subscribe button.
Yeah, just write us a quick review, right? Good podcast.
Right, good pod. Thanks. We love you. Give us 5 stars. And thanks for listening, everybody. And keep rolling them dice.